let's see if we can get a machine to enforce that, and see if we can get a machine to validate that, to facilitate that. Now, where they get interesting is when we actually have a medium to store them. That's where blockchains come into play, because we could do algorithmic enforcement of
well, that pretty much sums up what they are. Employment contracts, we've had to either deposit money with somebody who we trust, which is often, especially in Bitcoin, or we've had to unbelievably expensive, not always that. So we finally have a way. I mean, we could take it even further back. With calculations. Turn our arguments first and formal logic.
If you think about BitTorrent, there are many different BitTorrent clients, and all of these BitTorrent clients actually have to be able to talk to each other. With Bitcoin, you can actually properly implement the protocol, but because everybody's running the same software, it's okay. So competing implementations do get some of those bugs out. Having a good testing framework gets some of those bugs out. An end-to-end security audit, which is what they're going through, help us get some of those bugs out. And also recognizing that these systems are experiments at their core. It helps you get some sort of appreciation for that. You know, you're going to make mistakes. All people do. Google does. Microsoft does a lot. And in the process of that, you say, okay, are the things that are most important, like the money I have in my account, the things that are most important, who owns what, things that are most important, it's a system Byzantine fault tolerant. If those things are pretty well sorted out and locked down, then everything else is just a matter of we can iterate to a better position. And that was kind of the hope with Ethereum. Now, you are correct that Turing completeness does cause some issues. So one of them is if you don't have metered computation in your system, the halting problem is kind of a bitch. Because what happens is somebody could just have an infinite loop and it crashes the whole network, right? So people have to pay for computation in the network. There is also a significant scalability concern with the current architecture in that everybody has to run the smart contracts in the current state. So the issue there is that as the network grows, it's going to become prohibitively expensive to run a smart contract. So you need to shard it. And that's kind of the hope for Ethereum 2 and Ethereum 3 and other architectures, is to begin the discussion about how to shard a distributed system in a way that's productive for everybody. And it's important to point out that there are competing systems that can run smart contracts without the need of a blockchain. Like, for example, you could use TPMs, and that would work quite well. Or you could just have a lot of magic moon math come out of the woodworks and have homomorphic encryption, code obfuscation, and ZK snarks. And then, frankly, you get the same value and productivity of a smart contract, but you can do this now on any backend, whether that be Amazon or Rackspace or you know, Microsoft Azure. It doesn't really matter. So it's just one implementation, and it got everybody thinking about how to do smart contracts best. And we've seen tremendous innovation since the project was announced. For example, Ripple was Codius, and there's the AT project, and there's others like Next has been pushing very hard. And it's very exciting because we get to see competing security models, competing computational models, and some are better suited for certain classes of problems, and others are better suited for other classes of problems. It's exactly what you want to see in a decentralized movement.
Thank you. And Edgar, could you tell us something about the trust, maybe with the software you...
Yeah, so, okay, so I mean, Charles was, I guess, was talking about the whole system, right? So, is Ethereum as a whole going to be broken in some way? Inside that system, you're going to be running a bunch of individual programs, right? And anybody can write that program. That program obviously has to work correctly and give you, for it to work for the people who are actually using it. But you could have a program that was working wrongly, and that wouldn't have any particular pose any particular problems to all the other people who are using it. So as far as the whole system goes, the things that we have to worry about are firstly that there's some horrible bug in the protocol that causes people to lose money. Bitcoin early on had some really, what would have been, had they been exploited, really catastrophic bugs. You know, there was the op return bug, which would have allowed anybody to spend anybody's money. You know, now Ethereum obviously has had a lot more scrutiny. It's, you know, it's had a lot of very smart people looking at it, and it's been built and tested with the knowledge that this thing is actually going to be big and successful. You know, whereas Bitcoin, when it was first created, was a lot more experimental. I think most people just wouldn't have expected it to get as big as it did. But anyway, so that's the first problem, is just kind of dumb bugs in the protocol like Bitcoin had. The second problem, I guess, is problems with sort of the incentive system, which also is something I'm still scared of with Bitcoin. I mean, so Bitcoin has this, you know, assumption that, you know, you're going to have, if nobody controls more than 51%, hopefully people won't collude to do weird stuff. And to date, that's been okay. But I don't think, but nobody has proven theoretically that that should be okay. I mean, when you're dealing with human incentives, you really can't prove these things. And I mean, a lot of these things are designed, at least you try to design them so that they can withstand a rational attacker. But what's much harder to defend against is a really stupid attacker with a lot of money doing some really stupid stuff. And if you look at what happens in actual financial institutions, you get a lot of people with really strange incentives doing very strange things. So I do wonder, even with Bitcoin, it may be that when we get to the point where miners are no longer these kind of gentleman anarchists, right? And you get to the point where control passes to psychopaths with MBAs who are, who are thinking about their own bonuses. Maybe miners will do some really strange stuff and do weird stuff to Bitcoin. Ethereum is, in a way, it's been thought out with a lot of knowledge already about Bitcoin. So in that sense, they start with an advantage over Bitcoin. But at the same time, it's also for, as I understand it, for things like how you do mining, proof of stake, and there are a lot of kind of untested ideas in there, and very under a lot of pressure with a lot of money riding on.
March 20th.
There you go. Yeah. So So I mean, I think there's a good chance that we'll know by March 25th. But there is that kind of that lack of history that's always concerning. And then just finally to the point of individual, that when you're making, if you're just transferring, just doing stuff kind of within the terms of the crypto system, if you're just crunching logic, then assuming your program is correct, then the right thing is going to happen. But in the real world, the big problem we have, and this is the problem that we try to help with at Reality Keys, is that if you want to make any kind of interesting contract, you nearly always end up looking on something happening in the outside world, right? Something happening in the real world. So you need somebody and some mechanism to actually get that data into that system. And there are a lot of different mechanisms. There are people who are trying to do something that kind of mimics the basic sort of consensus systems of Bitcoin and Ethereum, but it's a hard problem. And so with any individual contract, there's always going to be the question of, is wherever you're going to get that data from, is that going to give you the right answer? But by the way, that's also a problem we have with pretty much any existing system of dispute resolution.
Thank you very much. So just a reminder, the software that Edmund has programmed is called Reality Keys. That's what he was talking about. So my next question is, in what way are smart contracts revolutionizing in this day and age? Do we see them as the next generation for decentralized transaction systems? Is it really decentralized after the question I asked previously? Do smart contracts see some difficulties in legislations? Could smart contracts in some cases be illegal? And do you think the laws are the same in each country for them to work out?
You want to do this for me? Okay. So first, in terms of law, more often than not, you have some freedom in what laws you want to follow if you're in a private setting. So if I'm some company, we can kind of choose what jurisdiction we want to settle debates at, what legal system we want to use. For example, if you're in the Islamic world, maybe you want to use Sharia law. So you have some flexibility that you can also use private law, and this is not exactly a new precedent. You look at the Middle Ages, we had lex vacatoria, and it was basically the law of the merchants. So they would go from country to country. They had their own court, own mechanisms upon which debates would be resolved. So in the modern day analogy is maritime law. If you think if you're a shipping company, you have 25, 30 countries you go to, it doesn't make any sense to have lawyers from every single country and resolve disputes this way. So the hope is, if you have rights for digital signatures, that one can invent a new private legal framework that's kind of global. And so the decisions, arbitrations that blockchains make, smart contracts make, will be honored in whatever jurisdiction you have to be in. But that's a long way off, and the law tends to lag tremendously so behind technology. People who are a little older will remember the NSF AUP. Anybody remember that? Okay, so it used to be that selling things online in America was illegal. Look it up, 1992, we repealed that. Yeah, Kevin probably remembered. Yeah. And so, yeah, there's a legal lag there. Now, in terms of where smart contracts can be revolutionary, I think it's more evolutionary. You want to have a situation where, as technology evolves, you get cost reductions in doing business. So right now, there's a lot of uncertainty involved with that, especially when you're vetting counterparties or trying to get predictability in the behavior of your counterparties. If you can start templating these things, having standards across the board, and also digitizing the assets, not just the cash, but the actual land, bars of gold, these kinds of things, and know that your jurisdictions you're doing business in will honor that, then all of of a sudden you start getting a break behind how your relationship is going to unfold. Doesn't mean we've disintermediated humans completely or courts completely. No. What it does mean is that you've created a situation where when they get involved, they're getting involved for more specific things that are easier to resolve. Or I should say, they're getting involved in more specific things that are harder to resolve algorithmically, and you really do need human judgment. And then the case of the easy stuff, all of that's contract. In some cases, you won't even require a lawyer. Now Edmund is absolutely correct. All we do require oracles. Almost all cases, you need some sort of external data feed that the system can trust. And that's a discussion that needs to be had in contracts. It's how do we trust the feed of data coming in? Very simple thing is, let's say we want to create a value stable currency. That could be a wonderful thing. Bitcoin is very volatile. We'd like it to be stable, but it's volatile. So contract for difference would be a wonderful mechanism to perhaps create a value stable currency that we could use for microfinance or to be a unit of account for debts. Well, here's the problem behind that. How does your system know the price of Bitcoin? Very simple, right? You have to trust a price feed for this. Well, that's where an oracle comes into play, and it's great to see innovation from Shelling Coin to TrueCoin, and also from other ideas about how to do that, and hopefully we'll be able to find a way to make that work.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just following up on that, just for people who are interested in this, I should mention a project called Augur.
Augur, yeah.
Augur.
It's based on TrueCoin, yeah.
Which is right, based on TrueCoin, which you might want to look up. So this is a very interesting, very clever, I think quite ambitious attempt to get information about the real world without relying on some trusted person. We don't yet know whether it works. If it does, you may not need me to do what I do. But it's a difficult problem. Back to the kind of the broader question, I guess laws that may affect the kind of contracts that you're going to make the kind of agreements you're going to make smart contracts about fall into basically two buckets. One is designed to protect the participants to the contract, and the other is designed to protect society from the participants to the contract. The first one, I think, as Charles said, we can kind of think of it as the law lagging behind this stuff, but for the law to stop lagging behind this stuff is a kind of getting to a libertarian paradise where, for example, the law doesn't care, the government doesn't have strong opinions about what kind of employment contracts would be legal for them. As it stands, we're going to have this situation where you've written a contract that's embodied in code. The code is, we hope, going to come up with the response that the participants designed. But if it ends up challenged in a court of law, the court may have some opinion that the underlying agreement is invalid for whatever reason. So what's going to happen then is, I think what we kind of hope would happen in this space is that if a court does make some kind of judgment against the outcome, the machine generated outcome of the contract, that they're going to issue an order to the beneficiary and say, you've got to cough up, and that they're not going to mess with the underlying mechanisms involved in the smart contract. The other possibility here, if we're dealing with external data feeds, known places of business, which this is an issue I worry about, is it's also possible that they might go to these oracles and try to get them to enforce some kind of action. And that could potentially really actually change the ability, cheaply and effectively, if you've always got to worry about some jurisdiction somewhere making some legal decision. So anyway, and so that's my comment on on laws that are designed to protect the participants from each other. The other kind of that are designed to protect society from some contracts. So, for example, if somebody wanted to kill me, they might make a contract that if I died, this person got paid, and that would allow you to do, for example, a crowdsourced assassination contract. Now, you can't do this with reality keys because it would be against our terms of service, and we would be very cross if you did anything like that. But I think it's not unthinkable that that these systems will be used for that kind of thing. And we in the space we need to be ready for the kind of publicity we're going to get when that happens.
Didn't Amir Taki build one?
Somebody, I don't know if he did one. Somebody was doing escrow for assassinations. somebody who I think was in favour of assassinating politicians, just as a general concept. Never mind who it was. I mean, you know, if they're a politician, they want them assassinated. So they were offering to hold on to your money and make sure that went to the assassin. But I don't know. I don't even know if this is an actual original problem. I don't know if assassins have a hard time collecting, you know, unpaid debts. But you know. But anyway, you can certainly see
enforcement is built into that arrangement.
Right. But you can certainly see that there are all kinds of illegal, you know. I mean, any new technology is going to be used for illegal purposes, and this one certainly is. I'm certainly sure it's going to be used for illegal purposes.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add on, that if you look at the financial industry, we do tend to standardize contracts. There's futures contracts, all of these kinds of things. And the only thing that varies are the parties involved and the parameters behind the contract. What's really exciting about smart contracts as well is we're actually trying to standardize relationships between people. And once the judge understands that standardized template, then it's much easier for them to adjudicate. It's much easier for them to actually look at it and say, oh, you know, that makes sense. So it's really exciting, and I think that's going to be a big innovation, is to have kind of object-oriented law and basically legal templates for almost any type of relationship you want, and to make those accessible in the developing world at the first point, actually at the same time as they're accessible in the developed world, which is unheard of, right? Generally, you have rule of law countries, and then everything is kind of in the developing world. But now both of them have the same legal system for not only just person-to-person contracts, but actually business-to-business, and these things can actually be built up into a decentralized autonomous organization. So it gets really exciting and kind of trippy.
Thank you. So my next question is, as I understand, a smart contract is a process in which a computer protocol facilitates, verifies, or enforces the negotiation or performances of a contract. So since smart contracts actually are made by computers, and the agreement therefore would, for example, guarantee someone to be paid for such and such services provided, what happens if humanly something goes wrong? If the person physically, for some reason, cannot deliver, or on the other side, would the smart contract continue paying him on and on until the smart contract ends? Isn't it problematic? And could we say that the human aspect is lacking in smart contracts? As I understand it, the smart contracts are also so strong that different parties cannot subtract themselves from them. So the good side of the smart contract is that you can be 100% guaranteed that the contract you make with someone will be 100% honored. But on the other hand, if there is any kind of human error, what kind of problems would that create? Usually human beings are impulsive, they make agreements and they cannot provide them. And if there's a fraud, well, it comes to previously, but how can they legally rule it? Is there, you know, you said that judges can take care of that. Could you explain it?
Okay, so first, smart contracts are written by humans. They're enforced by computers. So you use a programming language like Solidity or E or something to write them. But in terms of the actual enforcement, if you write a bad smart contract, just like if you write a bad crude, it's a basic axiom of business, right? And that's why we have lawyers. That's why we have people who are trained to do these kinds of things. Now, if you write a good smart contract, you can create escape clauses, escape hatches, where you say, given this trigger, like if a person dies, then the contract is invalidated. Now, that can be programmed in, and actually, when I say object-oriented law, these things can become abstracted from your particular arrangement. So you can think of it like you imported man switch clause, or my dead person clause, or this is my you violated U.S. law clause, or something that invalidates the arrangement, and that only has to be written once, vetted once, and now it can be used and inherited into your system as just a single clause, like a legal API in a sense. So that's the protection. Now, there's a transition period to get there, and there's going to be a lot of debates and mistakes and problems along the way. But over time, just like with the existing legal systems we have, eventually they get a degree of robustness over time.
Thank you. Ed, do you have something?
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, except that the other bit that kind of interfaces with the human dimension is what we were talking about earlier, where you have to get these data feeds. You know, and a lot of the time those are very kind of mushy issues, right? You know, has this website been built to an appropriate standard, well, you know, that's quite a subjective question. So what's going to happen is that the smart contract is going to end up kind of defining different ways that you could make this decision, but the actual decision is still going to be human and squishy, and, you know, as I will call it, you know, wet logic, dry logic.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we're gonna pass the questions to the people in the hall. So if anyone has a question, please raise your hand and come here to ask it just here. So is there any questions from the public? Just any? Does everyone have a, yeah, okay. Okay.
The Undertaker.
Hi, welcome to Japan.
It's my pleasure.
And I just had one question, and that is, when you first started up with Ethereum, how did you first get into that conversation? Was it you who initiated the conversation? Was the conversation brought to you by someone else? If you could just answer how kind of you got started with Ethereum, like who did you found it with? How did you guys start talking about it? Things like that.
Okay, so I got involved very early days. Actually, it was Anthony Diorio was the person who brought me into Ethereum. So Anthony is, at the time, he was the director of the Bitcoin Alliance of Canada. And we were working together on an education project. I'd ran the Bitcoin education project for some time, and I did some content, and he wanted me to do some content for BAC. And so anyway, he said, you know, I got this white paper from this really smart person in Toronto. His name's Nathalie, and I can't make heads or tails of it. Can you read it? I said, all right, I'll go take a look at it. So I read the paper, and it was just profoundly brilliant. But at the time, I think it was an overlay protocol on Primecoin. So it was a little bit different than what Ethereum looks like today. So Vitalik and several other people and we just kind of worked together and had a lot of discussions. And over time, it started materializing to something that we could create a real project with. So we all decided, let's go down to Miami. And this was in January of 2014. And then we went down to Miami to go ahead and see what the community response was. And we turned out to be like stars down there. So we said maybe we should actually do something pretty bold and big with this. So that's kind of the origins there. It was very humble. It was kind of like an open source project, as many things are. I think Linus Torvalds started Linux in his basement, you know, solving a personal itch. And in terms of Vitalik, he started Ethereum the exact same way. He was working on the Color Coins project and the Mastercoin project, and he was really tired of the kludginess of the system and trying to actually get things to work properly, and the fact that he had to make all these bizarre trade-offs. And he says, well, why don't I just have a damn programming language with blockchains that I can do anything I want to do with? And they said, well, that just doesn't exist. And he says, well, why can't we build one? And that's kind of the history. It goes deeper, obviously, but we don't have enough time to go through the whole thing. Does that kind of answer you?
Yeah. A follow-up question. What do you think about Vitalik and others doing the cryptocurrency consortium? Do you think that those types of kind of like standards committees will be important in the smart contracts area, as well as like Vitalik is saying that they will be important in cryptocurrency areas?
You know, Michael Manelli at Zen wrote a wonderful paper called Voluntary Standards Markets, and it kind of talks about the entire ecosystem of standards bodies. So I'm a firm believer in voluntary standards. I think they make the market better, and I think they need to be competitive. So there's not just one, but there's many, or else you have tyranny of the standard. But we're right now in a position of Bitcoin where you have a lot of people floating around who say, I know Bitcoin, and how do we validate that? There's no college degree, there's no nothing. You know, we ran into this computer science, you know, how did you prove you knew anything about computer science back in the day? I guess you're a mathematician or something. So this is just a natural response, and it's a response to enterprise adoption. Fortune 500 companies are very credential focused, and they say, well, hire somebody who's qualified, and you know, then you have to get to this really big debate. And you know, there's an old saying, no one ever got fired for buying IBM hardware. No one ever got fired for hiring an MBA from Harvard, or no one ever got fired from hiring a PhD from MIT, right? And so it's the same deal here. Basically create some standards, a baseline set, let's create a community debate, and then what will happen is people will disagree, and we'll have new standards bodies that compete with those standards bodies. But where it gets really cool is your credentials are not owned by the agency. They actually can be embedded in a blockchain. So if that works well, then college degrees can go that way, and all of a sudden MOOCs get really exciting. So I actually know Michael Perkman pretty well, and I've given him some advice on how to structure it. it's really exciting to see what they're doing at C4, and I hope they are successful and they spawn a lot more organizations.
Do you think there will be a similar type of organization for smart contracts in specific?
Well, he's planning on doing some smart contract standards at C4, but yeah, absolutely. There's definitely going to be that. When I was at Ethereum, I wanted to create an organization called the CCRG, the Cryptocurrency Research Group, and our hope was to kind of standardize some things through that, from the protocol to a standard journal, and to put money behind research for the hard problems of cryptocurrency. And if anybody has any time, Vitalik wrote up the hard problems of cryptocurrency. And he actually did a presentation in Silicon Valley in March of last year. Wonderful video. It's about an hour long. It was inspired by David Hilbert's Hard Problems of Mathematics that he did in the year 1900.
Thank you very much. So could you remind us when Ethereum will launch?
Well, I'm not involved in the project anymore, but I think it's March 20th. That's what I've heard.
Great. Is there any other questions from the... sir, please. Can you speak English? Otherwise,
Oh, okay. I think I'm okay.
yeah.
Welcome to Japan. Now, welcome to the country of Satoshi Nakamoto and Mt. Gox, right? Okay. I just want to know what's gonna happen by smart contracts. What's a big innovation? What's the real world gonna be by smart contracts? Can you give us some example?
Okay. That's a really broad, abstract question. I could ramble for an hour on anything I want. Thank you. So if we're thinking about what's going to happen in terms of smart contracts, the point is nobody knows. And so what we ought to be asking is, what are the foundations and what are the systems that people are building to enable other people to figure out what to do? It's like asking Steve Jobs in 2007, what's going to happen with iOS and the iPhone and the app ecosystem? And he said, no, I have no idea. And that's the fun part. That's what makes it really exciting. Now, we can imagine things. For example, we have self-driving cars now, and well, it's probably going to be at some point where somebody could go ahead and go to bed and rent out their car at night and just go 2 o'clock in the morning driving the streets and taxing people around, and they wake up, their car's in their driveway, and they've made money while they're sleeping. And smart contracts can enable that. It also enables the Internet of Things. And that's really exciting, because you think about where that goes. There's 100 billion connected devices. They all have to talk to each other. They all can do interesting things. And if it's not done correctly, it's a privacy nightmare. Your light bulb talks to your door handle, talks to your bed, talks to your vibrator, and all of those things are connected to some sort of network, and people can know about that and sell that data to other parties. So it's really important that maybe this is done in a way that preserves privacy and done in a way that's scalable. So there's a great project from IBM and SAM together called Adept that I recommend checking out, and that project does require smart contracts to work, especially for the negotiations between devices. So these are kind of the things you can look into the future. But here's the thing, regardless of where I think it's going to go, why don't you learn Solidity and go on March 20th when Ethereum is released and write a smart contract and play around with it, and then give us a good future. Build something for us. That's the power of these tools. That's the power of Bitcoin, is that we get to build the future now, not other people.
Thank you very much. So, Aaron, you have a question?
This may be solved by my lack of understanding of Ethereum, but as I understand it, you spend ethers to execute the contract and store data and so forth. Okay. So with Bitcoin, for example, as the price increases, you might have the issue of transaction costs increasing. As if the Ethereum price increases dramatically, could that affect the utility of Ethereum as far as being able to have contracts accessible to everyday people as opposed to corporations and so on? Can you explain maybe why it's not an issue, or if it is an issue?
It is an issue, yeah. So for version 1, the price, I think, per computation is fixed. But I haven't been involved since June, so I don't know what they've done to the protocol since. But this was one of the complaints Eris actually had. It costs money to run a contract. The question, should this be market set, or should this be a fixed cost? For the sake of simplicity, it's easier to implement a fixed cost system, but over time, one can explore different market mechanics and actually have, and this is where sharding computation comes to play, and actually that's what Codius is all about, right? So you say, I have a network of different people that I can run my smart contract on, and each network charges me a different fee, And maybe I have different trust levels with those particular networks, and I make a decision of how much money I'm willing to spend for how much trust I'm willing to give. Now, if you want something to be completely trustless, or as trustless as it can get, then you have to pay a lot of money. If you want something to be somewhat trusted, then you pay less money, right? That's where the model is going, but you have to start somewhere. So you start at fixed fees, and then you navigate around, move around, and version 2, version 3, version 4 allow you to actually implement marketplaces. So it's kind of a minimum viable product for smart computation, which is reasonable considering that first, the price is not going to be terribly high probably when it first launches, and second, the network is probably not going to be too large. We're talking about something that has less than 100,000 actors, more likely than not. But very quickly, it can grow fast, and so they need to have solutions in the queue for it. And I think they're already planning on some of those things. That's why they have such a large dev team. I hope that, does that kind of answer the?
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize there was the possibility of changing that model as far
Yes.
as the,
You can fix anything. I mean, you can change anything. Either you do a proof of burn to a new chain completely, or you do a side chain and the assets migrate over, or you can get the people behind the consensus algorithm to agree to change the underlying protocol. There's a great degree of flexibility with distributed systems, and if it's in the economic best interest of the system, then of course it'll be done. This is kind of the argument Blockstream has with sidechains, right? Good for Bitcoin, so people will agree to the forks necessary to implement.
Yeah, I think there certainly will be opportunities for forking, but generally speaking, people would prefer not to change the base of the network and how it works.
Okay, yeah, so like generally speaking, everybody's going to run on like a 1980s Unix terminal, and because it's convenient, all your apps are hard-coded. Yeah, I use them too. Right? But no, the world moves on, and the systems change in the world. And we had to retool to desktops from mainframes, and then we had to retool to mobile. Then now we're retooling for the cloud, and so you always retool as technology evolves. And right now we're in kind of the prototype, low user, proof of concept phase, 2009-ish Bitcoin, but more of a compressed time frame. But over time, you start asking, how will this make sense for the enterprise? And how will this make sense for consumers? And then how can we localize this to different cultural needs and different infrastructural needs? For example, if we're talking about the developing world, almost 100% of your users are mobile, right? So you need to have a fundamentally different experience and a fundamentally different appreciation for the underlying resources of the clients, especially considering they're mobile with multi-users. They share their cell phones. So if your credentials live on the phone, that's a problem, right? So yeah, and these are all discussions we'll have, and there's going to be a lot of experiments that are conducted. And at the end of the day, Ethereum may not be the most robust system. That's the problem with being on the cutting edge. Sometimes it cuts you.
Well, thank you very much. We're coming to end this. So I would like to thank the guest speakers today, and I would also like to thank Ken Shishido and then Honma-san for actually being, the in between the Japanese community and the foreign community and bringing up all this meetup every week on Thursdays. So thank you very much for both of them, and of course thank you very much for the speakers.
I'd like to say one last thing. I'd like to thank Lux staff for giving me this wonderful T-shirt. Kevin and John were kind enough to invite me to their office today, so I said I'm going to wear this shirt today. I'm not sure what they do, but it's a very good and innovative company.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, thank you very much. And we stop recording. So, is there anybody who would like have any announcement or any advertising or any promotions?
I like to listen about possible collaboration between Lux Stack and you.
Not today.
Okay, and I think maybe.
Or you have any announcement?
I don't have any announcement, but for those who were creditors of Mt. Gox, I think Jason Morris have an announcement to do today.
Hey, Jason. He's putting you on the spot. Yeah.
You have an announcement?
Announcement.
Yeah. Got a good product.
Come up.
Well, anyhow, go and check his homepage or on Reddit. Unless he comes to speak about it.
No. There's an update.
So today we posted a very small update on the Mt. Gox investigation. The report's actually about a year old, but we only got around to posting it today because of some various reasons. But if you have a chance, please check out our blog if you want to read a little bit about Mt. Gox.
URL? What is it?
Wizsec.com, or if you just go to like the Reddit Bitcoin, I think it's on there right now.
You guys find out where the point went, or?
Sort of. Maybe.
It's always long with Mark.
So please follow Charles on Twitter and follow me on Twitter and Edmund. And please live tweet about this event with hashtag Tokyo Bitcoin Meetup. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe I have one more announcement. I have Miura-san from Nikugato. He runs a yakiniku barbecue shop in Ningyocho. Just started accepting Bitcoin. And so please visit his shop in Ningyocho, Nikugato.
I can show you Wagyu, very best.
One of the best in Tokyo.
So at his shop, if you show your Bitcoin wallet, then you can get one drink free. You don't necessarily spend your precious Bitcoins. You just show your Bitcoin wallet and you get one drink free.
What do I put into Google to find the shop? How do I search for?
Nikugato. It's like arigato. Nikugato.
Nikugato. Okay.
It's like, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean,